Hi everyone. Today we have a very special guest with us, Mr. Abhishek Saraf, who has secured All India 8th rank. Let me make you very clear. Success is not a matter of luck, but success is a matter of you. That is SU. And it depends how much methodical and hard work, smart work performed by you. So we have a legend with us, one of the best brain in the country, Mr. Abhishek, who has secured All India 8th rank. Congratulations, Mr. Abhishek.
Thank you so much, sir. Hello, everyone. It's a privilege and an honor to be here. And, sir, I must say that while I'm grateful for the kind words that you have showered upon me, but I do believe that some sort of a role of a luck is there. But at the end of the day, the harder you work, the luckier you get.
So, Mr. Abhishek, tell me something about your journey, about yourself.
So, I come from Bhopal, Madhya Pradesh, and I completed my schooling from Bhopal in 2009. After that, I wrote the IIT JEE, that is the Indian Institute of Technology Joint Entrance Exam of 2009. I got admission into IIT Kanpur in the Department of Civil Engineering in 2009. There, I developed deep interest into civil engineering, and I diversified my learning through not only academics but also research projects as well as internships in India and abroad. I was involved in the organization of national level events in the college. So, pursuing that interest, I wrote the engineering service exam of UPSC. In those days, it was called IES, Indian Engineering Service, of UPSC of 2013. So, in my first attempt, I was able to secure All India rank 6th, and I was allotted to Indian Railways, where I did my training. I joined Indian Railways in December 2014. And during my training in Indian Railways, I developed a deep interest into general studies that was initiated by my interactions with my fellow probationers from civil services. But eventually it got to the point where I enjoyed learning about general studies more than civil engineering, and that is when I decided to go for civil services.
That's really nice. So, Mr. Abhishek, who was a very brilliant technocrat, now turning to be a true civil servant as soon as he finishes his probation period. So, let's come to the next question. What is the reason of choosing civil services as your career?
So there are a wide number of reasons that people pursue civil services for. Personally, for me, it is the opportunity to learn every day from a widest variety of sources, apply what I learn at the largest horizon, and contribute in a much more direct manner to the society. As I mentioned, I was already in railways, and railways forms the backbone of the economy. It serves the person at the bottom of the pyramid. 2 crore people are transported by railways every day. So it has a very critical role in the economy. But like I mentioned, the zeal for civil services came when I was in training in Indian Railways by my interactions with other probationers. And there I got to see that the wider perspective that they have compared to those from the engineering background. So I wanted to learn. I started learning. And my style of learning is that you have to apply what you learn. Otherwise, you are just collecting knowledge and it eventually fades out of your memory. So the opportunity to learn, apply, and contribute, all the three at a large scale, that is what led me to civil services.
So that is the reason, Mr. Abhishek, who were having an in-depth knowledge about civil engineering, but he wanted to adopt a wider perspective of life, and he wanted to apply it for the welfare of the people. So he chose for civil services, and finally he landed with All India 8th rank. Mr. Abhishek, what is your success strategy?
So I must say that the success strategy depends on the exam or the project that you're pursuing. You have to recognize the requirements of that project and then customize your approach accordingly. Now, if we can talk about civil services exam, because that is the most recent thing in my life. So the success strategy depends on the requirement of the exam, as I said. The requirement of the exam is for you to understand general things, not go into the depth of things. So I must state outright that civil services exam does not need you to be an intellectual. It does not need in-depth knowledge, but it does need consistent preparation and coverage of wide variety of topics, doing equitable justice with every topic. You might have interest in some topic, you might have less interest in another topic, but at the end of the day, it is a competitive exam. So you have to get the marks where you get from, and anywhere you can get from. So consistency, covering the syllabus properly, as well as one more thing I would like to emphasize, that people tend to not give as much emphasis to mental health in our society. But as a civil service aspirant or as a former civil service aspirant now, I must emphasize that every aspirant must focus on his or her mental health. They must develop a robust support system, and that can come from their family, peers, seniors, mentors, whatever. So consistency, balancing depth with width, mental health, as well as innovative use of technology. People say social media is not useful for preparation, but I must say that social media is a value neutral thing like any other technology. So you can use it for your benefit as well.
Right.
So, and other things we can discuss as we go along.
Right. So Mr. Abhishek used a combination of things that made his spectrum for the success strategy for civil service exam. So what are the obstructions and hurdles in your life during the exam?
During the exam, as I mentioned that so I started my preparation during my training in railways, and anyone who has done training in the government of India would know that the period of training in any service involves a lot of traveling. And this is a paradox as far as the preparation goes, because in preparation you have to carry a lot of books, and when you want to travel, you want to travel right. You cannot carry a lot of books, so you have to adapt. I had to adapt to the situation. I started using more and more technology, reading newspaper online as well as making notes online, reading PDF books. That was not a very pleasant thing because naturally I'm a reader who wants hard copies rather than books, but that is something I had to do. Another thing is that I came from an engineering background and I made a blunder in college. I narrowed my perspective to civil engineering. I could not care less about any other discipline. That was a narrow perspective I had till I joined railways. You know, in college I used to have debates with my batchmates, mess table debates. Like I used to think, and I quote now, myself from before 2014. I used to say engineering is the greatest form of knowledge and civil engineering is the greatest form of engineering. And they were not just vague arguments. I justified them because, you know, engineers make things work and they sustain the world. Civil engineers create the infrastructure that sustains the civilization. Otherwise humans would be in the jungles. So these kind of things, while helped me get the depth and interest in civil engineering, but they kept me blindsided from every other form of knowledge there is. And the ignorance level that I had when I started preparing for civil services was because of this attitude. And I must quote examples from my life again. So I used to think that the 6 rights mentioned in Article 19(1) are the only fundamental rights that Indians have when I had started preparation. That is the kind of ignorance I had. Once I wondered that what does the Supreme Court of India has to do with the Constitution? That is the kind of ignorance I started with. So anybody, any candidate who has been preparing for civil services knows that before you dive into the prelims, mains or interview phase, you need a large knowledge base. And I was completely lacking in that knowledge base. And that knowledge base had to be developed when I was doing my training in Indian Railways. So you imagine the scenario that you cannot carry the books. You're facing the inertia of starting and you have zero knowledge to begin with. That was the biggest challenge I faced during my preparation. And when I got to writing the exam, anybody who has seen my mark sheets would see that in 2017, I got 105 marks in essay, only 105. And an average selected candidate in those days was getting 140 marks. So that was a 35 mark deficit, and anybody who has seen the ranks and the marks would know that 1 mark means 10 ranks. So I could have become an IAS in that very attempt. Such is the story of every candidate. Something goes wrong for every candidate who appears lower in the list, but that was my story. So naturally I panicked. I thought that something has to be done about the essay because people do much better than me without any effort.
Right.
I relied on my peers. That is why I mentioned that you have to take the guidance of your peers. I would like to thank through your channel Mr. Shubhanshu Jain. He is an IPS officer serving in Jharkhand. He was the one who reviewed my essays. So like I mentioned, the inertia in the initial phase, the anxiety of not knowing what is wrong with the essay paper when everybody is scoring nice, as well as the perseverance that is required to go through attempts like 2017, 18, 19. That was the trials, those were the trials and tribulations that I went through during my preparation.
So we have with us Mr. Abhishek, who accepts that initially his journey was very humble, but that fortunately he was able to turn aesthetics out of the chaos. So Mr. Abhishek, can you tell me how you have made your timetable?
It depends on your knowledge base, the stage of the exam you're attempting. Suppose your knowledge base is very preliminary, you have just started preparation. So you cannot decide or you cannot strictly enforce a timetable. Look, I'm not going to study optional for this period, or I'm not going to study general studies. You have to read widely. Revision has to be given a relatively lesser priority, but in the initial stages when you are starting, like in the first 4, 5, 6 months, you have to read a lot and develop familiarity with the things. You even have to read things that might not directly be replicated in the mains, but they'll help you and enable you to understand the newspaper. And I can give the example of Mr. Rajiv Sikri's book for international relations. You don't generally use the points in mains, but then it enables you to understand the newspaper. So in that period of time, you have to focus more on reading, less on revising. But once you dive into the cycle of prelims, mains and interview, you have to customize your timetable, your day, as per the requirement of the exam. See, prelims require short-term memory and retention of a lot of facts. So you have to customize your day based on how you can recall things, how fast you can understand things, and how fast you can memorize things. And you have to customize the content that you are studying. You have to divide the content that you are studying accordingly. After that comes the mains. So in mains, you have to balance between your optional as well as general studies, which is completely lacking in prelims. There's no need for optional in prelims, and people tend to drop optional at least for a month before prelims, right? So personally for me, it was a relatively easier thing because my optional was civil engineering, and I had been associated with civil engineering for a decade now. So I decided to study civil engineering only between prelims and mains. But during that period, I devoted almost 50% of time to civil engineering. Why? Because even though civil engineering is not very tough to begin with, there are standard design methodologies for everything, but you have to have a lot of fluency. You have to have a lot of speed on the day of the exam. So engineering discipline, if I may say for other disciplines as well, requires a lot of writing practice right before the exam. And I must say that the rule of thumb that I give to people for civil engineering is that during the exam, your brain must not stop at all. Your hand can stop only when you are doing the calculations or reading the question. Your brain must not get stuck up anywhere. If you can do that, if you can ensure that, if your hand and brain are in perfect coordination based on the writing practice that you have done, then you will sail through engineering. So to ensure that, I devoted 50% of my time between prelims and mains to engineering. And I did not do it monolithically or uniformly. After the prelims, for 1 month, I studied civil engineering solely and newspaper. I did not touch general studies at all. And the amount of time that you will devote on general studies will depend on the number of attempts that you are giving. In the first attempt, you tend to give more time to general studies. You don't have that much knowledge base. You have not done revisions. You have not made relevant notes for mains or even for prelims. But once you go through the attempts, you make notes. And then you can rely on those exclusively. You can even not look at the books. So that reduces the amount of time that you have to devote for GS. So that's how I did. Same goes for writing practice. In the first attempt, I did writing practice for 7 to 8 months before the mains. But in the 2019 attempt, I knew that 1 month of writing practice will get me to the peak, my personal peak. Okay. So after that, I have to spend time to maintain that peak. And if I'm spending time to maintain that peak, that is not productively contributing. So I decided to not do writing practice in the initial part. Did civil engineering for 1 to 1.5 months exclusively, 15 days for GS1, 15 days for GS2, 15 days for GS3. Initial phase was exclusively dedicated to civil engineering. Then I tapered civil engineering a little bit, reduced the time from 10 hours to 2 to 3 hours per day. And in the last 20 days, no civil engineering at all, before 20th September. Started writing practice on 10th of August, devoted 40 days to writing practice, did around 12 full-length tests of GS, and 5 questions per day of writing practice in addition to those tests from 10th of August to 20th September to ensure that my writing practice peaks, my skill of writing practice peaks right around the mains. That is what you have to ensure. And since we have a 5-day gap after the GS papers, before the language and optional papers, I used that period to get reaccustomed with civil engineering, the touch that I had lost in the 20 days before the mains. That is how I divided my time.
Right. For essay, how you manage the time?
Yeah, essay I did tests all throughout the period between the prelims and mains. Like I mentioned, essays was my Achilles heel, and I was quite paranoid about the essay, and I could not exclusively figure out what was going wrong. So it became more of a matter of luck for me. People say prelims is a matter of luck. For me, essay was a matter of luck in mains. So I was doing tests right after the prelims till the mains, getting my feedback from Mr. Shubhanshu Jain.
Is your maternal uncle is the same?
No, my maternal uncle is Mr. Vineet Kumar Jain. He is posted in Morena. He is from state service. Shubhanshu Jain is a batchmate of mine from 2018 exam. He got IPS, he got 204 rank, I got 248th rank. So he gave me feedbacks for my essay. That is what I said, that you don't exclusively have to rely on feedbacks from mentors and coaching. You can get feedback from your peers as well. If they are doing fine in the exam, then they can give you the feedback.
So what kind of online platform you use to enhance your preparation?
Several online platforms. You know, the key of civil services exam is that no one platform can provide you all the material comprehensively. Some platform has some good content in XYZ material, some other coaching or platform can provide you good content in other material. So I used Insights on India, Civils Daily and IAS Baba regularly, and then they have to be complemented with Google searches for several platforms. So during understanding concepts, I came across several videos of Unique IAS as well and several other coachings. So like I said, you have to Google search and the most relevant content that comes up from the internet that has to be picked. So that was divided across a spectrum. Like I mentioned, inside Civil Daily IAS were followed regularly. Then Unique IAS, and then sometimes for time management, for stress management, for your mental health that I emphasize. Sometimes your videos sir were quite helpful.
Thank you very much. You liked our video. And what is the importance of answer writing in the success?
Very much so. It is very important because sometimes candidates make a mistake. They tend to presume that if I read the content, if I recall the content well, I'll be able to reproduce it. I'm sorry to burst your bubble, it does not work that way. Until and unless you do the answer writing, you will not be able to reproduce the content. The reason is that UPSC does not ask direct questions. Very rarely, except for geography, no direct definitions are asked. Sometimes maybe in an environment. So what UPSC is doing, it is integrating two topics, asking you as one question. So as long as you are not able to interlink things in your mind, you will not be able to reproduce them in the exam. And interlinking things can happen while you are making notes. It does happen. It's not like it does not happen. But answer writing is the best way to develop this knack. I can give you an example as well. Every year people say economic survey is very important, budget is very important. But you cannot reproduce economic survey just by reading it. It is a very technical document. So you have to make notes, number one. Then you have to interlink those notes with the topics of the subject that the survey covers. For example, a couple of years ago, there was a chapter like bounties for the rich. It talked exclusively about subsidies. So if you think that you will read that chapter and you will be able to recall it, it will not work that way. You have to make the practice. First you have to make the notes. Then you have to do the practice of reproducing those notes in answers. And then it will happen in the exam. Same goes for the budget every year. So I would say that it depends on the stage of the candidate, how much time they are going to devote for answer writing. I already mentioned how it reduced for me. But answer writing is indispensable to clear the exam. And I must also add that I mentioned about writing practice for optionals. Same goes for prelims as well.
So did you go for complete notes of polity economics or just the bulleted points of current affairs?
It depends, sir. I made notes for static as well and current as well. But I must say that I did not make notes for everything. You don't have to have a brute force approach to it. See, the book Spectrum, that is designed in the form of notes. So you don't have to make notes for mains out of it. But if you are preparing for prelims, you can reduce entire chapters to a couple of pages by making those notes. And even at the end of that very book, and at the end of every chapter, notes are given. And some factors that are not given in those notes, you can make notes out of them and cover the entire chapter within minutes.
So what are the books or the coaching material, coaching institute related material did you follow?
Okay, sir. So regarding prelims or mains, because it will be a very long answer.
Just
okay, sir. I could do that. So the idea in prelims was to follow a standard book list, but follow it sincerely. You don't have to customize or innovate very much, right? So for ancient India, it is R. Sharma. For medieval India, it is Satish Chandra. For modern India, it is Spectrum. And then for geography, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th NCERTs and Leong. For art and culture, I used Mr. Nitin Singhania's handwritten notes, not his book, handwritten notes. And after that, the environment, last few chapters of Shankar IAS and current affairs notes. Science has to be done exclusively by current affairs because static things are not being asked now. And then polity, that has to be done by Lakshmikant. And then that has to be supplemented with current affairs notes. And current affairs notes, as I mentioned, was made by consistently following IAS Baba Insights in Civils Daily and then doing Google searches. So in Google searches, various websites came up, like I mentioned, Unique IAS, as well as several other websites and blogs. Even Topper's blogs were relevant.
So during preparation, sometimes a student feels stress. So how you manage that stress?
The first step is to recognize where the stress is coming from. It is a standard thing. Stress is basically a mental health issue. So when you go to the doctor, they do the diagnostics of where the problem lies. So you should also do that, right? I'm not saying you're an expert, but generally we are able to recognize the source of our own stress. It might be that you're not able to recall the content that you're studying. You might not be able to do well in prelims, mains or any other test series. You might not be able to, despite your best efforts, not be able to appear in the list. So you have to recognize the cause of it and be honest with yourself. If you cannot tell yourself a lie, you can tell everybody a lie, but you cannot tell yourself a lie. If you are being honest with yourself, then you will recognize the cause of your stress. You are not doing well in prelims, you know the cause. Others might not know, you do know. So address that. Second thing is that I mentioned about being honest, and that means being sincere with yourself. Then you have to have a robust support system. I mentioned about mental health. So in India we have a saying, in Hindi they say that dukh baantne se kam hota hai. Talk to people. Don't be a social pariah. Talk to people. Develop a support system that is friends, family, peers, and those people who have been selected in service, those who were with you earlier and now they have been selected. So it will give you an inspiration that, see, a realistic person makes through this exam. They are not God sent from heaven. So that will help you. And then other thing I would emphasize that do a little bit of physical activity. Half-hour jogging, running, crunches, anything you can do. Even within your room you can do. There are plenty of YouTube videos. And if that does not even work, you can go for professional help.
We are having Mr. Abhishek, and he has very rightly said the stress is we should know where is the source of the stress, and we should try to analyze and we should try to neutralize it. So next question is to increase memory and concentration. Did you go for some practice for that?
Yes, sir. I recognized quite soon that brute force in this exam will not work. And as far as memory goes, there are several videos that are available, and incidentally I happened to come across one of your videos regarding memory. Yes, sir. So that helped a lot. Other than that, there are basic things that you can do. First of all, it is common to everyone that if you're studying a topic for 10 hours, your brain will get tired, your attention span will reduce, your retention will reduce, and your frustration will increase. So don't do that. It is very easy. Switch your topic after 4 hours. Divide your day into 3 parts. That's what I did. I mentioned that I made my own notes for current affairs. So that took me 3.5 to 4 hours for newspaper with various websites. And after that, GS1 or 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever. So 1 GS topic and 1 optional topic, or 2 GS topics, or even if you are devoting 10 hours to optional, 2 different optional topics. That is one basic thing. Other thing is that you should not take one long break. You should take multiple small breaks. I recognize this about myself, and probably this inverted U relationship that I'm about to describe will happen for every candidate. See, half an hour break was optimum for me in one stretch, not more than that. You can go for 20-minute break as well, it will help, but half an hour break is enough. If you take a longer break, you tend to go for 2 hours or 3 hours, the refreshment level will not increase. So if we plot our refreshment level on y-axis, time on x-axis, your refreshment level will increase till half an hour. It will remain static for 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours. And if you exceed 4-5 hours, your refreshment level will reduce. You will feel static and you will feel stagnated for the day. Then you will think, let me take a break for the entire day. I'll study tomorrow, and that is the day lost. So I would suggest people to take small breaks, multiple breaks, even if the summation of that one break is same as 2-3 hours. That the long break that you intended to take, but don't take a long break. Fourth thing I would like to emphasize is that I saw movie 3 Idiots back in December 2009. I was in my first year. The character of Mr. Bowman Irani, he used to take power naps. I do that too. That is where I learned that from, incidentally. And I have been doing that for 10 years now. And the way I do it is that 6.5 hours sleep in the night, 3 power naps in the day. So 7 hours sleep in the day. Concentration also depends on how refreshed your brain is. Do not try to go for a hard-working student. Do not try to go for being a hard-working student and sleeping only 4 hours and studying for 18 hours. It will not work. You will not retain. You will not recall. Give your brain enough rest. Give your body enough rest, and that is where the power nap comes in. That is where 7 hours sleep comes in. So that helps increase concentration. That helps increase memory as well.
So how you like the blogs of Unique IAS Study Circle? How much useful are they?
So you do internet searches, and I found quite a few videos of Unique IAS that were relevant for understanding the concepts, as well as like stress management and time management, and the current affairs material that was hosted online.
So do you think the civil services, it is only a game of some talented youth to crack, and an average student cannot crack it? There is a myth. Do you agree with it?
It is a myth. It is a myth. Incidentally, you might say that there are X number of IITians in top 50. IITians crack it in first attempt. I did not. I took 4 attempts. And as long as we are talking about intelligent students and IITians have a tag of being intelligent, I must say that I have been there, and only those people who are in the computer science department or electrical department, I'm talking about Delhi, Bombay, Kanpur, because these used to be at the same level. Only those people can be called intelligent in my opinion. Other than that, mechanical, civil, electrical, aeronautics, chemical, all the people are the same. They are just hardworking individuals who happen to have different types of day on the day of the exam, and that is why their ranks varied. All of those are sincere, hardworking individuals, and those are the kind of individuals that crack the exam. You might not have been sincere during 11th, 12th, so you might not have been able to go to an IIT. That does not matter at all in the exam. The day you get sincere, the day you get consistent, the day you learn to handle your mental health issues during the exam is when you'll start achieving. I said that this exam does not require deep intellect. You don't have to do a PhD in things. You have to have a general understanding of things. You have to have a superficial understanding of things. You have to balance width with depth of the subject. So if you don't have to go into the depth of the subject, superficial understanding is very easy. All it requires is consistency because the volume of the syllabus is large. So I would emphasize that do not at all harbor this myth in your mind that you have to be a genius. You have to work hard, you have to have consistency, and you have to have some element of luck. But like I said, the harder you work, the luckier you get.
They are friends and twins. So sometimes it happens one prepares for civil services, number of people come and demotivate us. So how do you tackle with such people?
The way of doing things is that I don't announce things. I let my work speak for itself. So I did not even tell many people that I was preparing for civil services exam. In railways, my batchmates were aware that I was preparing. My family was aware, but a few people in my family were aware. Not even the entire family was aware that I was preparing. I keep things in secret. I do my own work. I let the results speak.
Really nice. So what is now your next goal of your life after cracking the civil service exam?
So the goal of my life that led me to civil services exam was the same, and it still remains the same. I want to learn, I want to apply, and I want to contribute. Civil services exam is just a step. And IAS provides me an institutionalized platform to channelize the vast resources of the government. So it is a way, it is a step, or it is a platform rather than the goal. The goal is what I mentioned, and it remains the same.
And finally, what is your message to the civil services aspirants?
I would say that, first of all, I would advise you to introspect that why do you want to do this in the first place? And it is not just a philosophical message that I would like to convey to them. The reason that I'm saying this is because, you will face failures. Even the person who scored rank 1 in his first attempt did face failures during the exam. They might not have done well in XYZ test series. They might have faced the problems with any topic. Retention might have been a problem. Interest might have been a problem. So when you are facing these issues and you will face them consistently, your motivation as to why you want to go to IAS, IPS, IRS, whatever in the first place will help you get out of the darkness. So introspect, be honest with yourself, why you want to do it in the first place. That is the first message. Second message is that do not panic. This exam requires some time. It is an evolutionary thing. It will add to your intellect as well as your personality as well as your character. So give it some time. Do not panic. Do not expect results on the very first day. That is the second message. Third message is that get this thing out of your mind that you have to be a genius. Don't get intimidated by the profiles of people who are making it. There are several people who don't have so impressive profiles, still have made it in the first attempt. And several so-called geniuses in our society have been struggling. So recognize that this exam requires consistency, perseverance as well as grit, and do it that way.
And that is very true. You have said that failure is not opposite to the success. It is a part. Initially, after failure, if we put our courage together, a day will come and we will get success.
I would like to add to your point 2 things. Incidentally, one of my school classmates is also in the list.
Oh,
yeah.
Very nice.
8th, 9th, 10th, he was my classmate. And his name is Anmol Jain. He's on rank 14th. And this was his 5th attempt. And in his first 4 attempts, he could not get into the list. So there are actual people, and he's from IT Delhi actually.
He's from IT Delhi.
Yeah.
Did he qualify for interviews?
Yeah. This was his 4th interview.
Fourth interview.
So in 3 interviews, he could not get into the list. And he had a profile to back him up. So like I said, consistent hard work does pay you, but the harder you work, the luckier you get. I would like to add to your point that this year he has cracked forest services as well as civil service, and he has got rank 3 in forest service, 14th rank in civil service. So you don't have to get demoralized. Keep your mental health with you. Address that. And I would like to end my point by quoting our former president, the late Shri APJ Abdul Kalam. He said, "Fail means first attempt in learning."
Yeah.
As simple as. From those internet searches, you have to find definitions, concepts, diagrams, as well as any other value addition material that you can find. And for that, time and again, I came across the material hosted by Unique IAS and several other institutes, that the video logs of Gaurav Marwaha sir, they were quite relevant for core material as well as time management, stress busting, increasing your productivity, as well as retention, concentration. They were quite helpful. So time and again in my free time I would refer to these value addition or self-help blogs as well as content development blogs, and they were quite helpful.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.